John Lutheran Church on a beautiful and warm Saturday morning. Warm by comparison to other places in our country. So I was asked in our opening prayer this morning if we could remember those who are in some bitter cold through our nation and actually in some places really suffering quite a bit. So we'll do that. I just want to thank you for coming today and being part of this opportunity to think about estate planning and planning for the future. And we have an opportunity today to hear from a lot of people who have some expertise in different areas of life when it comes to reaching towards the end of our lives here in this walk. And while we do that today, we have workshops and opportunities for us to spread out and listen to different experts. So thank you for being here. Thank you to all of those people that are scattered about the front here who are our experts for the day. And I want to say a special thank you to Lutheran Church Extension Fund for helping to provide for this event. And so coffee was on them, I suppose, and maybe donuts too, I don't know. But we're thankful for their presence. We'll hear from them in just a moment. But I want to share a prayer with you. Before I do that, I just want to thank all those who helped to prepare for the day from St. John. Lisa Keene, who really took up on this event and led a charge, and then all the many different volunteers who have helped preparing the building, preparing lunch, and treats for us today. Those who are serving with technical support, all of it. So thank you to all of you. Will you bow your heads in prayer with me? We'll ask God's blessing on our time together. Lord God, we give you thanks and praise for your presence with us throughout our life journey. We thank you that you've also given us the promise that because of Jesus, we have a home. Once we can't call this our home anymore, you have a place for us in your house. Lord, we thank you for our Savior, and we thank you for your Holy Spirit who is our guide as we walk through this life, and especially through those times that are challenging, those times that are so different than our what we would have considered our best places in life. But yet, with you by our side, every moment can be good because we have your love and your support. We pray that you would give us a blessing today through the many different gifted people that are here to guide us, to give us wisdom and know-how about how to navigate different things that are perhaps in our future. We pray that you would bless us with camaraderie and community, and then help us to just appreciate this gathering and how you've gifted us with good friends in this place. And so now we ask that your Holy Spirit will bless all of our conversation, and we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I want to introduce to you Mike Madison, who is with Lutheran Church Extension Fund, and Mike is local to us here in Vancouver and a member of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church out on the east side of town. So we thank you, Mike, for your time today and preparing for us. So thank you for everything that LCEF does for our congregation and many more.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can you guys hear me? I have a coach's voice anyway. I used to coach, but just real quickly, thank you for having LCEF and coming to the Wills Clinic and all the other experts that are here to help with those decisions in life that are sometimes foreign or uncomfortable to talk about. So thanks for coming to learn more. My background, just real briefly, I was a Lutheran elementary school teacher and athletic director in the Lutheran schools in Seattle for 10 years. Then I went to corporate America, Albertsons, Nabisco. In 2002, I came back to Vancouver and went to Concordia as a fundraiser. And I did that for 18 years, 2 years at Peace Health. And I've been in this role as the vice president of the Northwest District for the LCMS, LCEF for the Northwest District. And I work with churches. And the next slide up there, I'm not the expert. Our mission with LCEF is to help ministry grow, to sustain, to strengthen them, and as you can read up there, to start, sustain, and strengthen ministry. And how do we go about that? We do that through investments and loans, and that's what I do. I do the investments. We do simple CDs. And with those investments, we take that money to help ministry grow. So you're sitting in a sanctuary, I think in about 2001 was completed. LCEF did the loan. We did a 20-year loan for this building, and I'm proud to say St. John's paid it off about 6-7 years ago ahead of schedule. And that's what we do, low interest, we do loans. And then the two other aspects is ministry solution, and that's where we have a team of people that come in to help churches do ministry clarity, ministry expansion campaigns, which is a building campaign, things like that. And the new one would be real estate solution. A lot of churches have land. Like this church has land back here. They've been talking about what should we do with that. We have experts that analyze that. And I help connect those people with ministry all over Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Alaska. We have 240 churches and ministries. Next slide. I want to thank our investors because ministry is real important, but if we didn't have our investors, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And as you can tell up there nationally, we have almost $2.1 billion in investments. And that's over 48,000 investors. Our best investment term note right now is 4% for 12 months. So with that money, we have $137 billion out helping ministry grow. I gave you an example here. I'll give you a recent one in Caldwell, Idaho, the church out there, Grace Lutheran. They don't have a corporate daycare in Caldwell, Idaho, and a lot of regional offices are moving there. And there's a lot of mom and pop child care centers. They built an 8,000 square foot building. They're going to be serving 100 kids. They opened this September. They got 40 kids in their child care center. And they are renting. We did the loan with that, the planning, things like that. So I'm real happy about that. As you can tell, a lot of you are going to say, what is a RCW? That's a roster church worker, pastors, DCEs. We have special mortgage rates for our professional church workers, discounted rates. When the rates were at 7%, we were offering 5.5%. We're able to do that because we've raised about $14.1 million over the past few years. Part of that money goes into that to help offset that rate. And we really value our church workers and the wellness of that. I want to break it down just briefly. In the Northwest District, we have $75 million in investments. We have over 2,000 investors. We have $48 million of loans out, affecting 130 different ministries in the Northwest District. And I'm the relationship guy on the ground, working with the Northwest District and working with the ministries in the Northwest. So it's just an honor to be here. I want to say thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about what we do. And the other experts here will be sharing too, because they care about your health and your financials, and they want you to live your dream and to do what you need to do. So I'm really glad that you're here. At this time, I'd like to introduce, all the way from Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our Director of Relations Donor Relations and Gift Development. She worked many years at Concordia Mequon, Wisconsin, as a development officer in a number of different roles. She's been with LCEF since 2013, and Diana Raasch is the person that coordinates this and goes around the country doing these workshops and helping with the church to get experts here. Don't feel sorry for her because she's not going home after this.
You don't have to say this.
She is going to Palm Springs.
Oh, darn.
To do another Will's Clinic. How appropriate when it's probably sub-zero weather back in Wisconsin. But
yes.
Anyway, let's welcome Diana Raasch.
I got this. Good morning, everyone. You want to switch the slide? Oh, I got the thing here, sorry. Oh, okay, I'm just going to say a few things real quick. So good to be with you, especially because of the cold, but especially because we're all part of one church, right? And it's my honor to be here and to get to serve you, to serve Christ, and in the midst of it, we serve each other. So I've been doing this a long time. It's about 30 years now. I'm older than I look. If you get real close, you're going to see the wrinkles. I've been blessed through Concordia and through LCEF to get a lot of great experience. But some of the experience I have in this subject are the hard knocks of time, and maybe some of you have been there. Sudden death of mom, no warning, brain aneurysm. Fell, and she was sustained for a little bit of time, but we had to turn life support off. So we're going to talk about things like that. My one takeaway from me, well, there'll probably be more, but I'm going to say this is a really important one. If you do anything for your family today and your spouse, make sure you have your power of attorney for health care up to date and that you've talked to your family about that. So I am from Wisconsin, originally from Illinois. I married a guy who was a pastor, and off we went. We were in New York for about 6.5 years, but we've been in Wisconsin about 38 years now. So been part of the church from a church worker perspective. So when you say church worker home, I know what pastor and others that serve in a DC role or whatever. It's an honor, but it's also a great calling. So what we're here to do today is to talk about you. If you didn't see the slide before, the Ask the Expert is obviously the name of this, and we have those wonderful experts that are going to present to us, but we need your questions. Some have given me questions already. I've got note cards that were out there. If you need note cards, just raise your hand. Mike can deliver them. I also got pens. So we're going to start it off. I think my husband and I kind of have a funny sense of humor, and it's always good to start with some fun laughs. So let's play our video. Oh, sound? There we go.
Well, she looked good.
She really did.
I think she looked pretty. She had less wrinkles lying down.
I never saw her without her glasses. A cloud of smoke around her.
Look, Aunt Jenny lived a long, full life, and she died in her sleep, and I think we can all take comfort in that.
How is that comforting? I sleep every night. I'd be more comforted if she died in a hang gliding accident.
Oh, in your sleep is what you're shooting for. You just close your eyes and never wake up. You never even know.
You never even know?
Point is, she looked good.
She really did.
And she's in a beautiful spot.
She really is.
Well, I'm never ended up in a place like that, I'll tell you that right now.
You figure out how to avoid it, let us know.
Already did. I'm gonna be frozen.
You're gonna be frozen.
Ew, asshole.
Relax. My whole body, just gonna freeze my head.
Not freezing your head.
What? Think about it. I'm pretty awesome. If I go, the world's gonna want me back. So I'll just freeze my head, and then when they come up with a cure for whatever I died of, they'll unfreeze me.
That's creepy. How can you be sure your head will ever get put back on your right body?
If I were you, I'd want my head to be put on somebody else's body. Hey, that's a good idea. If you go before me, I'm gonna freeze your head and put it on a dude's body.
Mom!
Nobody's putting anyone's head on anyone else's body.
No, but he will. He'll do it. And you won't be here, and you won't be able to stop him.
Axel, promise you won't freeze your sister's head and put it on somebody else's body.
I don't know that I can make that promise.
See, you won't be here. You won't be able to enforce it.
Fine, we'll put it in our will.
You guys have a will?
Of course we do. We scribble on a napkin. If we die, Frankie's sister gets the kids. That's our will.
We don't listen to you guys when you're alive. What makes you think we're gonna pay attention to your death napkin?
La, 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 la. I don't want to talk about this.
Did we seriously not make a will? I thought we bought that Johnny Cochran make-your-own-will floppy disk.
Then I don't have to live with Lucy? She promised me I don't have to live with Lucy.
Don't worry, the bank will take the house if they wait that long. And the rest of our vast holdings will be divided equally among our heirs.
Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. This is not appropriate to be talking about.
I call the dresser.
Where do you get the dresser? I need a dresser. You're a head, remember? You don't have clothes.
You had on a dude's body.
Mom, he's gonna do it. I told you he's still gonna freeze my head. Don't worry, Sue. I'll be here. I'll make sure.
sleep.
The point is, it was a lovely service. And today is not about us. It's about Aunt Ginny and remembering all the good things about her. It really is. Oh, I know. She used to make the best cheesecake.
Really?
Oh, sure. It was cherry. She got the recipe out of the box of graham crackers. She let me sit on the counter and I always got the first bite.
I'm hungry.
Can we stop making cheesecake?
No, nobody's stopping. People are going to bring food over to the house anyway.
Why?
Because when somebody dies, you're not supposed to cook.
Why not?
Because you're not supposed to cook when you're sad.
Are you sad all the time, Mom?
Yes. But the point is, I'm especially sad today because Aunt Ginny died, and it's a sad day.
I thought we were happy because she died in her sleep.
Yes, it's a happy, sad day, but we're grateful because she lived a long life and she's in a pretty place, and she died in her sleep.
Can we please stop saying that?
Oh, I remember something else. She once met Patton.
She did. Wow. Cool. Very cool.
You have no idea who Patton is, do you?
Give me a hint.
My God, that's pathetic. You're going to graduate in a year and you don't even know who Patton is?
I can amaze you with some of the stuff I don't know.
So this death napkin that says I have to live with Lucy.
Nobody's living with Lucy. Nobody's going anywhere. Everyone is staying exactly as they are, right here, right now, forever.
Okay, let's stop it here.
The point is, she was a nice lady who looked good and died in her sleep.
There's a few words later that I don't want you to hear. I mean, it's not terrible, but the point is family. You know, we probably don't have teenage children, but don't adult children fight? La, 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 I don't want to hear about it. How many times have you heard that? I have with my kids. So the point of all this is we want to provide this resource for you so you are prepared. You walk out. Many of you may have a will. Can I just say who in the room does have a will started or complete? Leave your hands up. How long has it been? Has it been 5 years since you did it? 10 years? Keep going. That's the point. That happened in my family. So sometimes the stories I'm going to bring up are stories like that, like mom dying suddenly, or the will being 35 years old. 35 years old. I'm not making that up. So again, this was on the slide when some of you first came in. Note cards. There's some at the back. Mike also has some. I've got some up here in pens. I also, Mike, if you would pass these out. If you didn't pick up, these are the slides. So you have notes, space, and you can take that for the experts or any of these slides. So, did you know this kind of planning is biblical topic? You know, some of us remember the word stewardship. Are we good managers, basically what it is. Sometimes we hear generosity now. So look at that second bullet and let that sink in a little bit. If we were to strike the comments from Jesus about money and other resources, we would be cutting his teachings by a third. First time I read that, it gave me goosebumps, almost made me sick. So please be assured this is a God-pleasing thing. I promise you it will help you, even if you have a will. Sometimes things change, right? In our world, things change sometimes too fast. We're helping you to make sure everything is updated if you have a will. If you need resources that we referenced today for your children, please ask. Many, if not all, are digital. I can email them to you, and you can send them or give me their email address. So I'm not a theologian. I married one, but I like to bring those topics up. Common goals. I mentioned my girls. We have 2 married daughters, one in South Carolina, Greenville, right in the path of that, and another in Houston. And when our grandchildren started appearing, I hounded our girls. Guardianship. Sometimes younger families don't even have them for 10-year-olds or even teenagers. It's really important you need to do that, and it's not hard to do. Obviously, most of us want to provide and protect for our spouses, That's usually goal number one. What's the impact when I go home to Jesus or our spouse goes home to Jesus? Some of you asked about some of the handouts on our table. I don't know if you've ever heard of a Christian preamble, but it's an opportunity to tell your story. What does your faith mean to you? Your family knows you. Obviously, they know where you go to church and they know your activities. But tell them one more time. Write it down in your handwriting. I wish I would have had that with Mom because she had beautiful handwriting. Even better yet, have someone audio tape. Best of all, videotape. You can do it yourself, or someone can help with their good old cell phone that we all have in our pocket. We can also remember the church. At these workshops, the biggest subject between what is the will and trust is how do I support my church? So we're going to talk about that. Okay. Oh. There we go. There, thanks, I pushed it too much. How many want to pay more taxes? We're getting close to tax time again. Raise your hand. Silly question, of course. If you own a business, you and a spouse, or you and a partner, or other family members, have you made those plans? Does your family know about it? What happens if the family member doesn't want to work and take over the business when you go home? This is a really, really important thing. Power of attorney, executor power of attorney for health care, and power of attorney for finance. Each state calls it a little different. Executor is really the key person. Who in your family or who of your network of friends do you trust to handle your estate exactly the way you want it? Because your estate attorney will, write down everything you say, and then you come back and read it, and it gets notarized. But you want someone that can manage the personalities. Remember, la, 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 or I'm a talking head, or whatever. They have to manage the personalities. I'll give you some hints how to do that. Best of all, when you lose a loved one, you're going through a lot of mourning, especially I felt with my mom because it was so sudden. We could not prepare. However, Mom wasn't in the hospital. Mom didn't have cancer or other health issues where she was debilitated. She went very quickly, and I know she saw Jesus' face right away. The things that happen at a passing sometimes are the arguments, and it can break up a family or greatly damage a relationship. So you get this in good order, it kind of avoids some of the arguments that may happen. So important takeaways. As Pastor started today, sit down at the table and say a prayer first. And every time you go back and look at it or update it, because it is a biblical thing to do. God will lead you. Always, always, always talk to the professionals. And I'm pointing right here because they're going to get up in a few minutes. These are the folks, did you know, that will work at the table with you and with your executor, maybe other heirs that you want them to hear you say your goals, why you're doing things the way they are. They still may push back, but your executor really needs to be there too, because that person is going to follow what you're asking them to do. And it's always good to review the will. Like I said, some are 10 or 30 in the case of my mom and dad, more than 30. So review them. Sometimes we sell an asset or we get a new asset. Our investments are always changing, right? Good or bad. And we need to make sure we have everything documented. Always, always, always remember your family. Bring them in, please. Even if they're not in the same state, we have that wonderful virtual room now, right? Whether you use Zoom or whatever, you can have your kids, you can have your heirs at the table, in the room, or virtually in the room. It's very helpful. We're also going to talk about gifts. Again, I get a lot of questions about this. That's my background. I'm not the estate attorney or the finance expert, but I've had an opportunity to work at Concordia, like I mentioned, in LCEF, and we help congregations do all kinds of things with financial, but this is another thing that LCEF gets to do to serve their church. So we'll talk about gifts to your church and other entities. So now I'm going to have the panel come forward, please. And you'll see their names in your handouts there. They also have some materials outside, and some of them are also doing breakout sessions. So you're going to get a whole wealth of information here. What they're going to do when they sit down and get comfortable, they have a mic, but they're going to tell you one thing that they really, really want you to know from their expertise that usually goes wrong. It could be something new or something in their practice that they see people just don't get it right. So I've talked to them, and they said they have things, but sometimes with the slide they want to add another thing. But we're gonna have the experts talk next, but I'm gonna walk around and pick up cards. So again, the questions we give are from you to these experts. I have some, but I need your questions as well. So whoever wants to start, you go first.
I'll start since I'm probably most comfortable up here.
Sounds good, Pastor.
I would say the one thing that I see that goes wrong is I show up with a family after somebody has passed away, and there's no plan to start with. We're starting from scratch about making funeral arrangements, and it is a total guessing game about where to begin and what kind of service this person wanted, what songs or hymns, favorite Bible passages, any of that stuff that might help us start with our planning is just absent. Very often that happens. So something on paper, then I'll help you do that with a workshop later in the afternoon, that can be a starting place. It doesn't even have to be all planned out, but somewhere to begin is an incredibly helpful thing because otherwise, what you can end up with, and it does happen sometimes, is you have family members who begin disagreeing, and one family member who feels like they have to carry the whole load for the rest of the family, and one person who's grieving in a different way where they're, really not capable of joining in the conversation like they usually would. And anyway, it just can become quite messy. So if you have a plan on paper and have discussed that with your kids or grandkids, somebody that can help take the lead, that makes my job a whole lot easier.
Good morning. My name is Heidi Johnson Bixby. I am a certified financial planner. This is my 35th year in the financial planning field, and my viewpoint is very much from a now while you're living comprehensive look at your entire financial picture. And the estate planning side, while most people think about the unpleasant conversation of what happens to my stuff after I go, I view estate planning also from what do you value, what do you want to have happen, and there are actions to take while you're living, as well as what do you want to have happen after things, after you pass, and what you want to have happen. So for me, I'm looking at the relationship with my clients around all those components, the family dynamics, how do we address those, how do we get a plan in place. And I will say, when things are in place, they do go a lot smoother. So what you hear about are all the times where things weren't in place, because that's where the problems come. And in my part of the presentation of the workshop, I'm going to talk about how you think you have a plan in place, but there is a coordination piece that is really important, because just because you have a will or just because you have a trust doesn't mean you're done. There is the coordination of assets, of titling, of beneficiaries. And so when that doesn't go right, what I see is, oh, you didn't change the beneficiary of your life insurance, and now your ex-spouse has it, and the widow with your new 2 twins has nothing. I mean, that's real. And the beneficiary supersedes wills or everything else. So there is a coordination piece that people forget about, and that's where a lot of the issues come in. Someone maybe has a special needs child, and there's no provisions for it going into a special needs trust, and now they're kicked off of their benefits. So there's while you're real component that needs to happen. I can talk loud. So that's the piece that I see is there is an honoring of what you value and the life that you've lived and what's important to you. And to me, that's just as important as what happens to those things after you pass. There's a real process of valuing your life and your family while you're living as well in this conversation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eva Lucchini. I'm an estate and special needs planning attorney, and I'm really glad to be here. And when Lisa invited me to be on this panel, I was thrilled that Heidi and Ralph are also on the panel because they share the values-based expertise and the values-based counseling that I have as well. So that made me really happy. These are the right sort of people that you should be looking towards for advice, people that share your values. So when I do estate planning and I think about what comes up a lot is, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know that was an option. And so that's what we're here for, is to make sure you know what your choices are and your options are. For example, if you don't have an estate plan at all, you know the state of Washington does have a plan for you. It's the default plan, and you might not like it. So there's a good reason to go ahead and do your estate plan and not just think, well, when I'm dead, who cares? Some people do say that. I know you're here because you do care. So let me tell you, I do see kind of the sad side of things, and I want to tell you about someone that came across when I had to do a probate for a woman named Evelyn, and her son, we'll call him Cain, was the executor. She had two sons, Cain and Abel. You might see where this is going. Abel had lifelong disabilities, cerebral palsy, and he couldn't walk, and of course his speech was really challenging, but he did his best to take care of himself. He did live with mom and dad his whole life. Anyways, I didn't do Evelyn's estate plan. She'd done it a very, very long time ago. So I'm just here to do the probate piece. And in her will, she gave everything to Cain with the wish that he would take care of his brother. So when Cain came to me and said, let's do this probate thing, he said, do I have to give anything to my brother? And I said, legally, no. But morally, it's between you and God what you do now. Well, he did not care. He said, my brother has soaked up so much of my parents' time and effort and money his whole life. I'm not going to provide for him now. And my heart was broken. It truly was, but there was nothing I could do. And I wish that Evelyn had thought to update her estate plan at some point so that someone could tell her there is a much better way to provide for both of your sons. Not to put Cain in this position, because I'm pretty sure he's not going up to God now, though it's not up to me. I just think it seems like a mark against him. But what she could have done, perhaps, is have the house that Abel lived in stay where he could live there for the rest of his life, and then go someplace else. Or perhaps also have a special needs trust, so some money can be there to help pay for things, in addition to the Medicaid-provided caregivers that can come into the house. There's just things that I think she would have wanted, and I wish I could have been there to help her with that. So what I'm here to say is it's good to know your options, and it's good to find out about them, and they're not all on the internet. You have to ask the people that do this sort of thing all the time. So I'm here to answer questions. I'm going to stay for lunch, so if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask me. I'm glad to be here. Ralph, it's you.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. My name is Ralph. been in the financial planning and tax world for 40 plus years. I think everything that we've talked about here today so far is spot on. You've got two choices, really, to start with. One is do nothing, as Eva talked about, and that's certainly an option. But if you want control over how much tax you pay, because that's my topic today, then you have to take control of all of these pieces and do it. And it's not something you can get off the internet, because TikTok will tell you everything's deductible. and it's not. But you really have to get in and do some of this work, because the consequences of not doing it. You think it's expensive to hire us now or hire an attorney now? Wait until somebody passes on and it hasn't been done correctly, and then the expenses go through the roof to fix these pieces, if they can even be fixed. And so that's the message today, is you have control. There are things that you can do that potentially can save you tens or hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, depending on the size of your estate, if you do the planning correctly. And that's what we're here to help you with. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. So this happens all the time, and there's a lot of different terms that we hear when we work on these kinds of plans, and this comes up all the time. What's the difference between a will and a trust, and why are they necessary? And sometimes other people will address, so I'm good with that.
I think this one's for me. So here's how I explain it to folks. There's two different paths you can take. There's the will pathway, which is just what we see in the movies, almost. It's where you say, who's going to handle my stuff when I die, and where does it go? That usually has to go through a probate. That's a court process. The will gets filed as a public document, so everyone can read it if they want. It gets sent to every heir and every beneficiary. So even somebody, your kid that you disinherited, they get a copy. They get invited to the probate if they have something to say. A probate process is not the end of the world here in Washington. I would say in Oregon or in California, it's lengthy and costly. Here in Washington, it is not so lengthy and costly, but the main fee is the attorney's fees. So for a simple process, I'd ballpark it around $3,000. That's what it's going to cost at the end of the day to pay that attorney. The other pathway is to do a revocable living trust. That's kind of where you do your probate in advance. So instead of doing a probate and gathering, the executor gathers the assets and puts them in a pot, distributes them and tells the judge, I did all the things, we're done. When we do the revocable living trust, we're making the pot now. You're making it with me, your attorney, and we're gathering your assets and we're putting them in the pot. Then, if you become incapacitated, your successor helps right then and there. It doesn't need to go to court. It's all very seamless. And at your passing, your successor trustee, pretty much the same as the executor, but that person just starts doing the things. They start distributing. They don't need to go to court to get permission. So I'll tell you, doing a will and then a probate, it's cheaper at this end, but we attorneys get you coming and going, right? You're going to pay us to do the will, and then you're going to pay an attorney to do the probate. But if we're doing a revocable living trust, we're not going to have a probate. So this is a little more expensive, a little more involved, but if a trust is the right thing for you, then it's worth it.
Anyone else want to share a story from wills and probate?
So just as an example, Aretha Franklin, you've all heard of her. Apparently there were 2 handwritten wills, not done by an attorney, that were found after her passing. Those had to go to a jury trial to decide which one they thought were her last wishes. And that is an incredibly expensive, incredibly difficult, and emotionally difficult piece to have to work through. And that's why you do it up front, is the idea.
The other thing, Eva, probably runs And two, that I think is important is if you have disinherited some family member for any reason, the reason you want to do your estate planning is because if you don't specifically say, I have left someone specifically out of this will, they can challenge it. And so while you can do a will online for free pretty easily, there are reasons you want to talk to an attorney is so that the language is in there to allow to make sure your wishes are fully carried out and don't allow for that contesting.
Interesting you say it that way. Are you guaranteed that your wishes are going to be carried out in your will after you pass? Is there a guarantee?
I think the only thing that's guaranteed are death and taxes, right, Ralph?
Yeah.
So no, but if you do it properly, it should be pretty solid. If you think that someone's going to contest this, then I would recommend doing a trust, and I would recommend making very clear, just as Heidi said, who would not receive. I would also put a no contest clause in as well. There's little things we can do. But again, no guarantees.
The other thing we hear a lot, and it's human nature, it's not a judgment. People say constantly, oh, just like Cain and Abel, I trust them to do whatever. Don't leave it up to someone to make that decision if that's not what you want to have happen. Even if you think, oh, I'll leave it to my oldest, not uncommon, I'll leave it to my oldest, they'll share. As our workshops will show later, there's taxes and rules involved. They can't just share. And so carrying out your wishes might seem like, oh, just give it to so-and-so to do, but it really doesn't work that way. And so talking through what you want to have happen means it has to be structured so that happens. Because again, if you just say, oh, I leave it all to so-and-so, they'll share, your wishes are likely not going to get carried out or not tax efficiently, even if that person does share, probably not tax efficiently. So you got to have things in place to have your wishes carried out.
I'm the oldest, so I'm kind of good with this plan. But I agree, it isn't the way to do it. If you give everything to one child and hope that they're going to take care of it, well, there are a lot of things that could happen. They could go through a divorce, and that could all go to their spouse, or they could have a creditor, and that could all get scooped up before they have a chance to do the things they want to do or that you would have wanted them to do. And then the tax part of it, ...
Oftentimes people will give their houses to their children without legal counsel, thinking, oh, this is going to bypass probate, this will make it easier. This is just one of the examples. That gifting also gifts your basis in that house. And if they don't live there, they don't get to take any exclusion when that house gets sold. They also don't get a step up in basis that we're going to talk about in our presentation later. And so to Heidi's point and Eva's point, it can get very, very expensive if you don't do this correctly. Even if Cain, for example, was a great person, if he gets sued after he gets the money, and even though he intended to help Abel, there's no guarantees that that's going to work. You have a much better guarantee if you specify things more specifically in the documents and with the counsel.
So we've heard two more words that's usually brought up, and we heard probate and trust. These are, questions also that are very popular, but can one or more of you give a good definition of probate and why it's needed, how it works, and trust? Now there's lots and lots of trust. That would be a whole nother hour and a half or so for trust, but why would we need trust, and why is probate even needed?
So here's what probate is. Probate is the way that property and money, real property like a land and a house, gets transferred to someone else, to your kids, Because they can't just show up and say, Mom passed away, so the house is mine. That's not how it works. The government wants to make sure that was the plan, either by the government's default plan or by the estate plan. So probate is where a judge is going to oversee this generational transfer to make sure it's going to the right place. That's how we've normally done it. But in places where probate is really expensive and takes a long time, like California, they invented this trust thing, specifically the revocable living trust that I was describing, this other pathway to avoid probate. That's really where you do a private agreement with yourself to put all of your stuff in your own revocable trust. This is my trust visual. It's a pot, and you put everything in it.
And Eva, what does revocable mean?
Changeable. When you create a revocable living trust, it's like putting saran wrap around everything. It doesn't give you any income tax biscuits. It doesn't save you in that regard. It can help you avoid estate tax if I bake in some special language, but generally it's just saran wrap. It doesn't protect you from a creditor or for a divorcing spouse. What it does do is mean that at your death, you don't have to do probate. You don't have to do that whole court process. Instead, your successor trustee, the person that you picked basically to be like your executor, will get to marshal those assets and distribute them right away. So that's why people create a revocable living trust as an alternative to doing the will. But like I said, that's a more expensive kettle of fish on the front end, and it isn't always necessary. If a basic will is all you need, I'm going to tell you that. If you still want to do a trust to avoid probate, right on, we can do that. But I don't like when attorneys just sell trusts to everyone. Oh, you got to do a trust. If a basic will is sufficient, you should know that, and it often is.
We're going to cover this in our workshop as well, but the reason you might not need a trust, and I agree, not everyone does, is because you can't put everything in a trust. So if something's controlled by a beneficiary designation, like life insurance or a retirement account, that's not going in your trust. So often at the point that someone sold their home and they have moved to a retirement community, there's no tangible property at that point, maybe not even a car. And so everything, depending on the size of the estate, can pass by beneficiary designation, and you don't need a trust necessarily. So again, it depends on the situation, the family dynamics, the size of the estate. There's no right answer. And it's more that how do you use the tools that are broadly available for your specific situation to make it most tax efficient, most ease of the transfer, and also putting those in control, whether it's your executor under a will or a successor trustee under a trust, putting those that are best suited for that job in control. Because that's another aspect. A lot of people say not only, oh, I'll leave it to the oldest child for distributing and they'll share with siblings. The other thing they say is the oldest should be the executor. And I'm not of that mindset necessarily. Maybe you're the right person in your family, but it's more, not always do they live near you, though that's convenient, but it's important to say who has the capacity. It's a time-consuming job. And people think, oh, I want to be the executor. I'm like, do you know what you're wishing for? That is not a fun job. It's a lot of work. So who has the capacity? Who has the kind of background enough to understand all the financials and the paperwork that goes with it? It's a big job. So I encourage you to think about who's suited to the job, not who's the oldest or who's even living near me necessarily.
Does anyone in the audience have an executor story, good or bad? Again, we can learn from each other. Yes, ma'am. Please. Oh, can I use one of the mics?
Sure. So, in my family, I'm the oldest, and I'm the executor for my siblings, and everything was left to me exactly the way she said. In my husband's family, he's the oldest, and they had a trust. The difference between our two families is my husband's family had everything goes as planned, everybody's happy. In my family, I have a sister who has not talked to me in 23 years.
Yeah, that's the hard one. Thanks, Lisa.
I was just going to share a story. A friend of mine passed away right before COVID, and she lived in LA. I live up here, and so it was, how do I settle her house and her estate and everything without being there. So my last visit was on March 8th, right as COVID started. We couldn't have a realtor listed, and we were going to do an estate sale, but we couldn't do estate sales. So this, my little cautionary tale is the Lord provides, because knowing her well enough, talking to her about what was important to her, I called the local Veterans Association. I said, would you consider emptying the house, doing that work, and then selling it in your resale store and using it for displaced veterans? And they initially said no, and then I said, well, for a $5,000 donation? They said, sure, we'd be happy to do that. And so the realtor called me later and said, I have another person who can't do it either. Can we do the same thing? So the Lord provides, yeah.
I had a pastor call me once. He knew I did this kind of work, and he said, Diane, you gotta come and sit with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They're farmers, and they need your help. So, of course, we did a workshop, and they came in the next, I guess I don't need two mics. They came in, and we chatted, and I asked about their family. And here, they have a lot of kids. I think they had 6 or 8 kids. And, you know, they just have a farm down the road, 2,000 milk and cattle, and 100 acres, 1,000 acres of farmland, Wisconsin. And, you know, our kids all get along. Remember, la, 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 cutting head off. They all get along. We don't really need this, but Pastor said we should come and talk to you. I started to shake, because it's like, oh, that, you know, is it going to be a family that's split up or whatever? Mom and Dad's goals not handled. So we had a question, is how do we do this? God will provide us the best answer for all of our questions. A couple more with trust, and then I'm going to move on because there's other questions here. And I'm bundling questions because you're all like-minded. If you have a will, is there a financial limit that does go through probate? So is it high or low? And does a trust make more sense for someone with more assets? So we're talking financial amounts, and is that a determinant of anything?
No, there's no financial limit when you want to do a will, though Aretha's estate was probably really large, and she probably didn't want it to be a public matter. And if she didn't know, but wherever she is now, she's, I'm sure, thinking, I wish this was done with a trust, so it would have been private. I will say that my new friend Robert is in the middle of doing a probate, and I said to him, like I tell anyone that's serving in that role, keep a log of everything you're doing, because you are supposed to get paid, whether you're an executor of a will in a probate or you're a successor trustee administering the trust. You should get paid for your time. And even though at the very beginning you say, no, I don't need to get paid, it's fine. Believe me, at the end you might be singing a different tune, and it might be really unfair how much work you did just to split it all up evenly with your siblings. So keep a log from the jump so that at least you can go back and decide, yes, I am going to take a fee, because you have to put that on Front Street. share that with all the other beneficiaries, but you do have a right to that, and I think you should take it.
And great, if you take it, just know it's taxable income to you.
But still take it.
Yeah, just know that, because I've had clients take fees that are 25, 30,000, like a reasonable fee for the size and work that they did, but then there's tax planning to know that you have that additional income for a myriad of other reasons, so.
But if you're not a professional executor, then it's not self-employment taxed. So you only have to pay regular income tax on that executor fee that you take. So, isn't this fun?
Ralph knows all the details. And I will text him because I don't know all the tax stuff. We're on a texting basis, and I'll be like, hey, Ralph, what's the da-da-da-da? And he'll tell me the information, and I'm grateful for that. Not any one of us knows all the things. That's why we have to do a team of advisors approach. So you should look for an advisor who does that approach, who takes a team of advisors approach. So one of the questions was, if I have a lot of assets, should I do a trust? Well, this is what we do. We look at your constellation of assets. So some of them are with your financial advisor under management, probably brokerage account, IRA, that sort of thing. And then, of course, there's the house. And then there might be other things, maybe a rental property. So we're going to look at that all together to decide if a trust is appropriate or needed. If you have a property in another state, chances are I'm going to say that a trust is needed. Or we might do a transfer on death deed in that other state. There's different options, but it's very individual. I couldn't say just a blanket when you need a trust and when you don't. I have to look at all of your constellation of assets, and I have to coordinate with your other advisors to give you the best advice.
Eva, while you're on that subject, if we have our will, but 5 years ago or however long ago we did it in another state, whether it's a surrounding state or wherever, what's your suggestion? What's the law around here? Some states will approve or agree unless it's something crazy, but around here, what's the law?
So the full faith and credit clause in our Constitution says that when you move to another state, your legal document is still good. It should still be good here if it was properly executed there, but it might be better. Maybe we have a different situation, like maybe our estate tax exclusion amount is lower than in the state you came from. Or maybe the state you came from is not a community property state, like our state is. So there's a few little changes that we could make. We don't necessarily have to throw it all out, but having an attorney review it and say, I think this is the tweaks we should make, the amendments we should make, or we should do a new plan would be worth it.
Similar question. If I put a trust together in another state, do I have to redo it because I'm now living in this state?
What we normally do is a restatement. So most attorneys are not going to want to go through a huge trust document and sign off on every little clause that they didn't write. What they're going to do is a restatement. So what are the basic things we're trying to accomplish, and now we're just going to restate it per Washington law. That's what most of us do.
Is there such a thing as a community property agreement? Community property agreement, and if so, what is that?
Yes, and that is one of the 4 musketeers of an estate plan for a married couple. You know, you've got your powers of attorney, your healthcare directive, advance directive is kind of in there, your will or your trust, and then I do a community property agreement. And that is because we're in a community property state, and if your situation is that at your death, everything goes to your spouse, whether it's my separate property or our community property, my half of that, it all goes to her. Then the easiest thing to do is to do a community property agreement so that if there's anything out there that's not in your trust, or if you don't have a trust otherwise, We don't need a probate at the first death. Everything just goes to surviving spouse. It's just an easy thing to add to your plan.
Did you hear that on the first death? So in my mom's case, she died first. Then Dad did some work. So we've got a few spouse questions, and you may have answered it, so bear with me.
So,
in Washington State, is your spouse always your beneficiary for your assets?
So let me add one thing before we give this
Please
back to
do,
Eva for
yes.
that one. A community property state also has a different tax basis in the property that is owned when somebody passes.
And explain
So,
that
and we're going to
basis.
do more of this in our presentation,
Okay.
certainly. But the idea is, if you're in Oregon and you and your partner purchased a home for $100,000 a whole bunch of years ago, and then that person passes on, it's only their half that gets a step up in basis to its fair market value on their date of death. And so their portion goes up, your portion does not go up in value, so you can actually end up with a capital gain in a non-community property state, which is why Oregon, for example, so which is why you do those agreements if you move to a community property state.
So, interesting. If you inherit funds from your family, can you keep those assets separate from your spouse?
I say yes, but if you inherit assets from your family, it's separate property until you commingle it with your spouse. So
The other thing exactly that. I've done divorce work over the years. If you inherit property, you need to keep it in your separate name. But the other dynamic with that is, let's say you inherit $100,000 and you decide to use that money for upgrading, and you sell your house and you use that $100,000 and you've bought a new house. That is now commingled assets and it's not separate property anymore. The same can be true if, let's say, you inherit $100,000. If you're using that for just kind of lifestyle, now it also can become subject because it is supporting your current community lifestyle. If you inherit it and it sits over here and grows, it remains separate property. So there are some dynamics that influence in a divorce proceeding whether or not separate property remains separate property. And going back to your spouse does not have to be your primary beneficiary, and there are reasons from an estate planning standpoint that we might leave assets directly to kids, charity on the first death because the surviving spouse has enough income and assets, and those assets can pass on the first death directly. But because in Washington we're a community property state, your spouse has to sign off that they agree to not being the beneficiary. And if they have not signed off, they can contest. So there's some logistics there that are important.
Pastor, from a church body perspective, do you know what, you don't have to give names obviously, whether here or wherever you may have served, where it, for good or bad, a will, impacted a family? What was the outcome?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of that. I can just think of one family in particular where two siblings had to deal with the estate of another sibling, and that got really messy. And the situation there that was extremely difficult was one sibling carried the load of all the work, and the other sibling did not, but both benefited the same. So it goes back to something Eva was talking about, and that was very trying on their relationship. So having things in order, as these fine folks were talking about, can be really, really important to save a lot of strife. And I think the only other thing that I would add is, as people leave a gift to their church or other nonprofits, I've seen actually rather little of that in the time that I've served as a pastor. No huge gifts. I haven't been around for $1 million bequest that's come to a church that I've served. Still waiting for that one. But sometimes larger gifts have been given. with very specific desires of how that gift should be used, which don't necessarily match anything that that church has lined up. Now, sometimes that can work out. An example of that was Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Hood River received, I believe, $1 million bequest from someone, and it could only be used for evangelism or outreach. And this was a small congregation. They didn't know what to do with that. Well, the pastor and the director of Christian education decided to go on a tour to find out where they were going to set up shop and do international mission as a little itty-bitty congregation. Turns out that worked wonderfully, and we've got Child Beyond International now and a children's home in Guatemala because of it. But that was kind of a specific use of that money, which makes sense. It was a large gift. You want it to be used in the way you want it to be used. But sometimes a gift can be given that it's like, for the development of a particular ministry, which by the time you die, that ministry is no longer going. What then can the church do with that money? And that just becomes kind of sticky.
And in that case, a lot of times what I tell folks is that happens. It may not be the exact name even, but it may be still a very missional outreach. Have plan B, maybe plan C, D, and E, so that when you do die, pastor can say to the kids, your mom and dad wanted this, and right before she died, that got changed to this ministry. So having that backup, so the funds, because I hear this all the time, there's a fund for robes for the choir, and that's wonderful. But large dollars of money when the church could have done some missional things. Music is beautiful, it's a big part of worship, but I don't know if we need perpetual robes for every year, right? Just my point.
I love to talk about philanthropy, and so I'm really glad that you brought it up, because here we are building our lives, we provide for our kids, our families, we provide for our church family right now, we provide for our community to the best that we can, and estate planning is part of doing that after we've gone home, because we know our stuff stays here, and we want something good to happen with it, and we want to share with our descendants, our children, our grandchildren. We want to share our philanthropic heart. We want them to see what we valued. So one way to do that is through your estate planning. There's giving while living, and Ralph will tell you, you should give out of your retirement account more than your bank account if you're over 70. That's a tax-efficient thing to do. You should also do that as a beneficiary designation. It's also very tax efficient on your retirement accounts. There's all kinds of ways to save money and do good things and make your legacy what you want it to be. And please don't forget your church family. If I had, most people think of the Humane Society first, and I love that, that's darling, but that they have a lot. They really do. Our church family, we take it for granted. But this all got built by people making their legacy a contribution to their church family. And we have a philanthropic expert right here, because part of Johnson Bixby is not just the tax side, but it's also the philanthropy side with Megan right here. So she runs Ripple Impact, which is something that Heidi created. And this is where you get to see, you get to talk about kind of what kind of philanthropy am I interested in addition to my church family, and have that joyful conversation with her. And then you talk to me about how you plan for it at your death, and then you talk to Ralph about how you can do giving while living in the most tax-efficient manner. That's how we make our world a better place, and I'm sorry, but I'm really passionate about it.
Sorry, I'm having problems with the mic. Go ahead, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
This kind of goes back to something else we were talking earlier, but I think it's important because another thing, like leaving the oldest is the executor, she or she'll share. Another phrase that I hear is, I want to leave it equally. And I have a phrase my team knows, I'm going to say it all the time. Fair does not mean equal. You have kids or siblings, any number of things in your life that there might be someone who needs more support, and it's actually a gift if you make sure they are provided for. Let's pretend it's kids. You provide for that child so that your other children don't need to worry about them. That is actually fair, but it might not be equal. And I really encourage you to think about that. And Brian, you had talked about, having the conversation. You don't have to share what your estate is as far as a dollar value. I know a lot of our clients, they have money and you'd never know it. They shop at the coupons, they want the senior discount deal. You would never know they had money. Their kids don't know they have money. That's fine. You can still have the conversation about what you want to have happen, and you can say, we've left more money for the benefit of this person so that you are not needing to take care of them or worry that they are taken care of. And if when they pass, there's money left, it will go to you. Or funding education is important to us, and we realize you didn't have children and they did, but funding that education is important to us, and so we've left money there. You don't have to give numbers, but I do think it's important, as Brian and Diana said, explain what's important to you and why you've done what you've done, so there's not the hard feelings, because if your kids hear it from you, they're a little more likely to accept it than whoever the executive is that has to pass on the message. So fair does not mean equal, and that is okay.
I missed it in the slides. It's in your notes. There's a great book called Splitting Heirs, not hair, heirs. Ron Blue, you guys probably have heard of that. Great book because it's on that subject. How do you give to your children? How do you give in X, Y, and Z example? And fair is a very difficult word because it's so just out there. It's a great book. Can I give a gift of mutual funds to my church?
It depends on the size of the church often. Yes, but the church has to be set up to accept securities, whether it's mutual funds, individual stocks, it doesn't matter. They need to be set up to receive. And so it might be that you need to donate your mutual funds to a donor-advised fund, and then from the donor-advised fund, send a check to the church if they're not set up to receive it directly, but definitely yes.
And if the church pastor, I don't know if you want to answer that, do you get security? Do you get mutual funds?
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment. I know where my lane is, and this isn't mine.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. So in this case, if you don't, and maybe there's a finance committee person in the room, that's okay, because maybe your district does. I know in South Wisconsin, we had a broker, and we had congregations getting gifts like that all the time. In instances, LCEF has done it too to help in a pinch. So there's always resources. I see Ralph going for his mic. Please do.
So there's another side to that on the tax deductible portion, because it depends on what you're donating, what the basis is. We're back to how much did you pay for it, and how much of that is deductible, and do you benefit from that deduction? And so it really depends, and you have to do the research up front. You don't just automatically give the mutual fund or appreciated stock or something like that. It really takes more questions, more coordination.
Okay, don't feel hesitant, though, to do philanthropic giving, because there's a lot of things to know. You don't have to figure it out yourself. That's what Diana's for. That's what Mike is for. Pastor is going to refer you to the right people. So when someone comes to me and says, I want to leave a gift, or I want to be giving to my church or to this charity, I say, let's talk to the right people so that we can figure out how best to do it. Let's not just go off and me write in, $50,000 for choir robes. We're going to find out what's the best way to do this. But you don't have to figure it out. That's what actually these folks are for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. And sometimes there are probably various funds at your congregation, and that's why it's good to talk to pastor. Again, not so much, or the finance committee, not so much the numbers have to be shared, but what's going on in the church? I mean, you probably go to voters' meetings, you read the newsletters, or you glean them at least. You know what's going on. But sometimes the lay leaders have a drawing board, and there's things they've always wanted to do. It's kind of on a wish list, 5 years or 25 years, or some other missional thing that just isn't in the budget yet. That's where going and talking to the pastors and lay leaders of, we're wanting to make a gift, it's in our plans, but how should we list it? Because that was a question I got. How should we list that in our estate plan? Your attorney, estate attorney, I encourage you to get an estate attorney, not one that does a lot. Get someone like Eva. If you don't have one, find someone that's got that specifics, because they can make sure that it's done exactly for you. They put it together, you come back and review it, hopefully with your executor. Your attorney will explain it all to make sure you understand the language. Again, that's how your goals are suffice. Let's do a couple on power of attorney. I referenced that a little bit. So can we talk about power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for finance? In this person also said when there's 2 siblings, and then I have a story because my sister and I were put in that role. Power of attorney for healthcare, finance.
So power of attorney, I say, is the most important part of your plan, because estate planning isn't just what happens with your stuff when you die. It's how we take care of ourselves while we're still alive, but maybe having some problems or end of life. So power of attorney is the way that you give authority to someone else to speak up for you on your behalf and express the wishes that you would express, but you can't because you're in a state of some kind. So you can pick one person, or you can pick 2 people, but you got power of attorney for medical and healthcare stuff, and you got power of attorney for financial stuff. So the medical stuff is talking to the doctors, the care providers, facilities, and whatnot. The financial stuff is talking to Heidi about the assets under her management. Maybe they have to be used to pay for some of this care, that kind of thing. Accessing your bank account to pay for your care, to keep food on the table, the mortgage paid, the cats fed, that kind of thing. So they can be the same person, they can be different people. So maybe your daughter is a nurse and your son is a gambler. So I would make your daughter both of those things, but definitely your healthcare power of attorney. But you can make them different people, you can make them the same people, you can make them 2 people. And here's what I like about making them 2 people. So my brother and I are power of attorney for my auntie. I wasn't going to do this all by myself. No, he is going to help. So the way it's written is we're both power of attorney together, but we can act separately and independently. That way we don't have to sign everything together, but we can kind of split the job up. So that's one way to do it. These documents are so important because if you don't have them, and you don't have a spouse that can step up and do all the things for you, then they're gonna need to get a guardianship conservatorship over you. If you are in the hospital, you have a stroke, you have dementia, something, they're gonna have to do that in order, especially to marshal your resources for your care. And that is a costly and icky process that could have just been avoided with these cheap and easy documents.
The other thing I'm going to say about a power of attorney, so we're often working with our clients for a long period of time. We know their family dynamics. They can have a power of attorney that's older, and that's fine for us. But if you go to a bank and you have a 20-year-old power of attorney, it might not fly. And often they're asking for an attorney to certify that it is still current or some fashion of that, and it's not a fun thing. So a will sometimes can go a little bit longer with, and it still works and is good enough, but a power of attorney is something I would say, especially as you get older and the chances of needing it are there, that you make sure it stays current, because if it's too old, the power of attorney will run into some problems. Often as well, some hospitals want their own thing on file for who has authority, because usually when the stroke happens or whatever happens, you're not like, oh, where's the power of attorney document? And so sometimes you can file that with your doctor or the hospital as far as the who makes decisions. I personally am not a fan of two people being the power of attorney, but I also understand in like your instance, it probably works and you can divvy up. You also get into who is responsible for something. It's just easier if it's one person versus two, and it's best if it is or, where they can act independently, because if it's an and, you both got to be there and you both got to be signing everything. And there may be reasons to do that just because of family dynamics, but again, think about the logistics of trying to get something done.
So the story, I told you my mom died suddenly. The house that I grew up in that my parents had their entire married life was my grandfather, mom's dad's, and mom's home. So my grandparents on my mom's side. And mom died, and it was time to bring dad to the attorney. Obviously, the attorney that did it 35 years was no longer around. I don't think they even had the paperwork. Luckily, the attorney we found was able to dig up the will. Interesting, though, is when we sat down and looked at that, Dad's name was not on the will to get the house. My parents were happily married. I mean, every day kind of, we all have our fights. But is it because the old thing, the guy is always going to die first? Not in Mom's case. So luckily, we had a good relationship, my sister and I, and our father, because he really didn't know the finances, because Mom did all that. That took a while. But if he didn't have a house to live in and we were fighting, he would have been out on the street. So renewing those. I also had a lady in one of my workshops got real nervous, and she raised her hand. She said, oh my gosh, I got to do this right away. The person I have as my executor is sicker, she's got cancer right now. So again, why do we review these things for instance like that? We're going to go to children now. What if parents want to transfer a title to the house to a child so as to avoid losing the house if it's put into long-term care? Possible, what are the implications? And this is another question we get a lot because it's involved,
So
especially
that's-
by state too, by the way.
That's Medicaid planning.
Yeah.
That's what we call that on this side of the table. And that's where you're worried that you're going to outlive your resources and you're going to need Medicaid, government-provided long-term care, because you know that Medicare, it's basically universal health coverage for people 65 and up and that have disabilities, but it isn't total coverage, right? It covers 80% of stuff, and it doesn't cover vision, hearing, and dental, which seems like the things we most need. And then it also is only 80%. It doesn't cover long-term care. If you need to be in a facility for a long time, you have to use your own resources. So people try to figure out, how can we still get the house to our kids? Medicaid planning is a complex thing, and I wouldn't dare do it right here and now, other than to tell you, you don't get to just give stuff away and then turn around and say, I'm indigent and I need Medicaid to cover my long-term care services. Medicaid, they have a 5-year look back. See, what did you give away? And you could try to get it back, but if you can't, they're going to say, they have a little calculation, and they're going to figure out, well, we will not pay for your care for this long. That's horrible. So this is something to think about if you think that your assets aren't going to help you. If you're looking down the barrel of a diagnosis and you're looking at the possibility, or your spouse, Medicaid planning is very important. And then I forgot the question beyond that, so.
So the other piece of that Medicaid planning is when you gift something, if it's more than $19,000 in value, you have to file a 709 gift tax return. And it doesn't cost any money generally, it can, but it generally doesn't cost any money in tax. It just uses up your unified credit for when you pass on, but you still have to file that, and that's what gives that time frame for the 5-year look-back period. And so anytime you're gifting, it really needs to be part of that strategy, if that's appropriate. And then you do the Medicaid planning, which is really detailed, and I think it changes about every 2 weeks. So, yeah, it's very complex.
Property question. Can multiple properties have people added to the deed? I'm thinking multiple people be added to a deed, or multiple, I don't know if I'm saying that correct.
It's kind of a Ralph thing, but I'll say I'd rather inherit property, as long as it's a sure thing, than have it be gifted to me.
Because you run into the same thing Ralph just talked about. If you're giving them a portion of the house, if you add them to the title, so you run into the same gifting limits.
Yeah, you've got the gifting limits plus the basis, plus if it's your primary residence and they don't live there, they don't get step up in basis. I mean, all sorts of different pieces come into that play depending on who owns it. So going all the way back, you don't put people on without legal counsel. Yeah. You can do it, but...
Not usually a good idea.
Yeah, not usually.
Probably always a good idea. One more question, and I apologize. These are wonderful questions, but I did not get to them all. So our experts are going to be around. Some of them are teaching, others are teaching. If you have specific questions that I did not get to, please forgive me, but it's a matter of time, and we have to get on to our next thing. Last question, a will question, of course. Can a married couple have the same will?
I've only seen one in my lifetime. I've only seen one will, but no, usually people have their own will, and it's sometimes a mirror of each other, but they have their own will.
Mm-hmm. In the case of my dad, everything had to be put just in his name. The house obviously was what I referenced before, but other investments. Again, we have lots of questions here. Can we give our experts a round of applause? So it's been my honor to be here, and I'm going to be around as well, but our wonderful Lisa should get her own round of applause.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you all for being here today. You're making this really a rich conversation for all of us. I appreciate your questions and your attendance. Do want to say, so this is our last time of all of us being together in the same room. So I do want to shout out to a number of people, to Johnson and Bixby. We really appreciate you coming in force today and sharing your expertise. Ralph, Heidi, Megan, particularly doing workshops as well. To Matthew and Eva and Julie, we appreciate you being here and sharing. Julie is at the Hope Dementia Support Table. She has information about both the POLST form and a dementia directive, which I had never heard about before, but making your will known during challenging times. To all those who volunteered today, Jeanette, as always, thank you. Alice, Laurel, John Rasmussen, Andy, Jack, Chris Farley. These events are fun because we get to work together. Thank you. Our wonderful staff, Pastor for being part of this, David for manning the technology and a lot of the background stuff, and to Aaron, who's not here, but big help there. To St. John, the church, people have pointed out this is a wonderful facility. It lends itself to these kinds of learning events and full-day events. We appreciate our church for hosting and convening us. And to LCEF, a real concrete partnership today. Mike, this all started with a conversation like a year ago, and you've provided invaluable information for us with data and with a linkage to Diana, who it's been a pleasure to host you. So you got to see grass. Thank you for coming. We look forward to continued work with LCEF. Okay, so now logistics. Where do we go from here? I just want to say one last thing. I really appreciate the hard work this is. And none of you said, oh, this is easy, and you're going to do it in a Saturday afternoon on your own. It's not easy, but to me, it's more, I don't know if it's more joyous knowing we're in this together and that we now have some common language and a common experience upon which we can build as we each invest in doing this for ourselves and our families. So appreciate that. Lunch is at noon. It will be in the gym. We have 2 sessions in the gym this afternoon. Dr. Dan Constein, a member here, will help us walk through healthcare directive, and then Pastor will help us think about planning funerals and memorials that will be helpful for our families. And then immediately following this workshop, Ralph and Heidi are staying in here. Eva will be in here. Megan will be in the Emmaus room. Does anybody need to know where the Emmaus room is? It's off of the office suite. And then immediately following lunch, while Dan's doing healthcare directives, Matthew is going to be in Kairos talking about just what are the questions that need to be answered as you think about planning a funeral. If you need anything, let us know. If there aren't copies of things, Diana said she'll send us links. So please let us know what you need. Blessings upon your day. Again, thank you for being here. Oh, yeah, Cliff. I'm sorry, you do get a 10-minute break. You get a 10-minute break.